Kemi didn't plan to attend the party, but her friends insisted. It was supposed to be just a fun night, a way to relax after the stress of university exams. She wore a simple black dress, hoping to blend into the background. The music was loud, the drinks were plenty, and the crowd was lively. At first, Kemi stayed with her friends, but soon she found herself alone, sipping her drink in a corner. Then Adekunle entered the room, tall with a commanding presence and eyes that scanned the room like a predator. Everyone knew Adekunle, the billionaire businessman with connections to the powerful and dangerous. His name was whispered with both fear and admiration. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, and maybe in some way he did. Kemi didn't notice him at first, but when their eyes met, something inside her froze. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was the atmosphere, but she couldn't look away. Adekunle walked over to her, a smirk on his face. "You look lost," he said in a voice that was both charming and menacing. Before she knew it, they were talking, laughing, and drinking more than she ever planned. Time passed in a blur, and when Adekunle suggested they live together, Kemi in her drunken state agreed. They ended up at his luxurious mansion, a world that was far from her modest student life. One thing led to another, and they had a one-night stand. The next morning, when Kemi woke up, she regretted her actions. She wasn't that kind of girl. How could she have let herself get so drunk? She hurriedly dressed up, trying to sneak out without waking Adekunle. As she closed the door behind her, she hoped that would be the end of it. But deep down, something told her this was just the beginning. For days, Kemi couldn't get over the feeling of guilt. She replayed the event of that night over and over in her head, wishing she could take it all back. She didn't tell anyone about what happened. Her friends would never understand, and she didn't want to be judged. She decided to block Adekunle's number and move on with her life. It was just one night, right? No need to complicate things. She focused on her studies, trying to bury herself in her books. But the memory of that night kept haunting her. One evening, as she sat in her small university hostel room, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "I haven't forgotten you. We should meet again." Kemi's heart raced. It was Adekunle. How did he get another number to contact her? She felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't respond. Days passed and more messages came, each one more persistent than the last. He wanted to see her again, but Kemi had no interest. She had made a mistake and wanted to move on, but Adekunle wasn't the type to take no for an answer. One night, as she was walking back to her hostel, she saw a sleek black car parked nearby. The windows were tinted, but she could feel someone watching her. She hurried past, her heart pounding in her chest. That night, she received another message. "You can't hide from me." Panic set in. Who exactly was Adekunle? She had heard rumors about his involvement with the dangerous cult, the Order of the Red Hand. But those were just rumors, right? Kemi hoped they were. She tried to ignore the messages, but her fear grew stronger. Something told her she was in deep trouble. Kemi's anxiety grew as Adekunle's messages became more aggressive. She decided to confide in her friend, Tolu, but even as she explained the situation, she left out certain details. "I had a one-night stand with someone I shouldn't have," she said, her voice trembling. "Now he won't leave me alone." Tolu was concerned, but didn't know the full story. "Just block him and stay away," she advised. "He's probably just one of those arrogant rich men who think they can have anything they want." Kemi nodded, but deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. Adekunle was dangerous. The next day, Kemi received a call from an unknown number. She hesitated before answering, and when she did, it was Adekunle's voice. "You think you can ignore me?" he asked, his voice calm but strict. "You don't know who you are dealing with. I'll make sure you regret this." Kemi's hands shook. as she hung up the phone. She was terrified, but what could she have done? She wasn't dealing with an ordinary man. Adekunle had power, real power. She started noticing strange things happening around her. People who were close to her seemed to be watching her more closely. It was like she was being followed, but she couldn't be sure. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Kemi came across a post about Adekunle. It was an article detailing his involvement with the Order of the Red Hand, a secret cult that controlled everything from politics to business in the country. Adekunle wasn't just a bully. He was connected to people who could ruin lives without a trace. Kemi's heart raced as she read the article. Adekunle's wealth and success were tied to this cult, and now she was caught in his web. The fear that gripped her was unlike anything she had ever felt before. She had to get away from him, but how? The more she tried to distance herself, the closer he seemed to get. Kemi couldn't take it anymore. Every time she glanced at her phone, she feared seeing another message from Adekunle. Every shadow seemed to loom larger, and every unfamiliar face felt like a potential threat. She decided to run, to disappear from his reach. Her first plan was simple: block him on all platforms, change her number, and avoid any places she thought he might frequent. She even stopped attending social events with her friends, too scared that he might be lurking around. For a few days, it worked. No messages, no phone calls, and no sightings of the sleek black car that used to make her heart race. Kemi started to breathe a little easier, thinking that maybe Adekunle had finally given up. Maybe he had found someone else to manipulate. But one evening, just as she was settling into the idea of being free from him, her phone rang. This time, it was Tolu, her close friend. Kemi, I just saw something strange, Tolu said, her voice shaking. There was a man asking about you at school today. He was wearing a black suit and didn't look like a student. When I asked who he was, he said he was sent by someone important. Kemi, is something going on? Kemi's stomach churned. It was him. Adekunle was still watching her, still tracking her every move. How could she escape from someone this much powerful? Fear quickly turned into panic. The next morning, as Kemi was leaving her hostel, a black SUV pulled up beside her. The driver, a tall, muscular man in sunglasses, rolled down the window. Adekunle wants to talk to you, he said in a low voice. Kemi froze, her mind racing. She had no choice. If she ran, who knew what Adekunle would do? Reluctantly, she climbed into the car. The ride was silent and tense. When they arrived at Adekunle's mansion, he was waiting for her in the same lavish living room where everything had started. He didn't even look up as she entered. You think you can just disappear? He said, his voice calm but cold. You belong to me now, Kemi. No one walks away from me unless I allow it. Kemi tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Fear had gripped her throat. You will never leave me, Adekunle continued, his eyes finally meeting hers. And if you try, I'll destroy not just you, but everyone you care about. Kemi's heart pounded in her chest. She knew now that this wasn't just a one-night stand. She was trapped in a much darker world than she had ever imagined. She had to find a way out. But how? Desperate and scared, Kemi turned to the only person she could think of, an old friend named Ijoma. Ijoma was someone Kemi hadn't spoken to in years, but she remembered that Ijoma could solve difficult problems. She was resourceful and knew people who could help in unusual ways. Kemi met Ijoma in a quiet cafe far from campus, hoping that Adekunle's eyes weren't watching her every move. Ijoma listened carefully as Kemi explained everything: the party, the one-night stand, the messages, and Adekunle's dangerous cult ties. Ijoma didn't say much at first, but her eyes grew wider as Kemi spoke. Kemi, you've gotten yourself mixed up with a dangerous man, Ijoma finally said, leaning forward. The Order of the Red Hand isn't just some silly cult. They control a lot of things in this country: people, businesses, and even politicians. If Adekunle is involved, he has real power. Kemi swallowed hard. I need to get out, she whispered. I don't know how, but I can't keep living like this. I'm scared, Ijeoma. Ijeoma nodded slowly. There's someone I know. He's an activist, an online journalist, and he's been trying to expose men like Adekunle for a while now. His name is Femi, popularly known as Very Brown Man, and he's very good at what he does. If anyone can help you bring down Adekunle, it's him. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Kemi would meet with Very Brown Man VBM and provide him with as much information as she could about Adekunle and his cult activities. They would gather evidence, and once they had enough, VBM would expose him to the public. It was risky, but Kemi knew it was the only way out. The next few days were a whirlwind. Kemi met with VBM in secret, sharing everything she knew about Adekunle. VBM was determined and confident, but Kemi could sense the danger in his voice. Once we go public with this, there's no going back, VBM warned her. Adekunle would fight back, and he won't be kind. Kemi nodded, her heart pounding. She was ready to do whatever it took to be free from Adekunle's grip. But deep down, she couldn't get over the fear that this battle was just beginning. Femi, known as VBM Online, worked fast, using his online platform to begin to expose Adekunle. He started with small hints, subtle posts about a powerful businessman involved in shady cult activities. It wasn't long before the post started gaining attention. People began to speculate, and some even mentioned Adekunle's name in the comment. Kemi watched from the sidelines, nervous but hopeful. This could be her ticket to freedom. The more VBM posted, the more people talked. It seemed like Adekunle's reputation was finally beginning to crack. Then one day, it happened. VBM made a video exposing Adekunle's ties to the Order of the Red Hand. The video detailed Adekunle's manipulation, bullying tactics, and cult connections, complete with evidence that Femi had gathered from various sources. The reaction was immediate. Social media exploded with outrage. News outlets picked the story, and soon Adekunle was a national headline. But the exposure didn't just damage Adekunle's reputation, it also put Kemi in the spotlight. People started connecting the dots, and soon her name was being mentioned in connection to the story. Adekunle, of course, was furious. His business associates began to distance themselves from him, and his empire started to crumble. Kemi received a call from Adekunle the day after the exposure went live. His voice was cold and dangerous. You think you've won, Kemi, he hissed. This isn't over. I'll make sure you pay for this. Kemi's hands froze as she hung up the phone. She had exposed him, but at what cost? The battle was far from over, and she knew Adekunle wouldn't go down without a fight. In the days that followed, Kemi felt all the negative emotions: fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. Everywhere she went, she felt eyes on her, as if Adekunle's influence stretched beyond just his power and wealth. News of the exposure had gone viral. Adekunle's name was on every blog, news channel, and social media platform. The once untouchable billionaire was now facing public disgrace, and people were eager to know more details about his sinister involvement with the cult. Kemi avoided public places as much as she could, but her life felt increasingly claustrophobic. Every time her phone rang, she feared it would be Adekunle, ready to make good on his threats. The exposure had weakened him, but not broken him. She knew he was planning his next move. Her fears were confirmed when Tolu called one night. Kemi, I just heard from a friend at Adekunle's company. He's planning something. I don't know what it is, but they are saying he's more determined than ever to get revenge. You need to be careful. Kemi's heart sank. What am I going to do, Tolu? She whispered. He's not going to stop until he destroys me. I thought exposing him would make him back off, but it's only making things worse. Tolu sighed. I don't know, Kemi, but maybe you need to lay low for a while. Get out of town, somewhere he can't reach you. But Kemi knew that wasn't an option. Running wouldn't solve the problem. Adekunle would always find her, no matter where she went. She needed to face this head on. The only comfort she had during this time was Femi, the online activist. He had been her rock all through this period. Whenever she felt like crumbling under the pressure, VBM was there with words of encouragement and a plan. We've come this far, Kemi. We are going to finish this, he told her during one of their secret meetings. But even Femi knew they had to be careful. The cult Adekunle belonged to wasn't just some small-time group. They had power, resources, and connections. And they are going to fight back, Femi warned her. But we are ready. We'll take them down. Kemi wasn't so sure, but she had no choice. Adekunle's anger grew with each passing day. His once pristine reputation was now in tatters. His business was losing money rapidly, and people who once bowed to him were avoiding his calls. He had underestimated Kemi. That much was clear. Now, he needed to make a bold move to reclaim his power and put Kemi in her place. One evening, as Kemi was returning to her apartment after meeting with Femi, she noticed something strange. The street lights flickered, and the air felt unusually cold. As she fumbled for her keys, she heard footsteps behind her. Panic surged through her, and she spun around to see two large men in black suits walking towards her. Before she could react, one of them grabbed her arm. You need to come with us, the man said in a low but cold voice. Kemi struggled, trying to break free, but their grip was too strong. They dragged her to a black car parked nearby and shoved her inside. As the car sped off, her mind raced. This was it. Adekunle had finally made his move. They drove for what felt like hours until they arrived at a secluded house on the outskirts of the town. Kemi was pulled out of the car and escorted into a dark room where Adekunle was waiting. His face was twisted with anger, but there was also something desperate in his eyes. You thought you could ruin me, didn't you? He sneered, pacing in front of her. You think that little stunt with Femi would make me back off? No, Kemi. You've only made things worse for yourself. Kemi tried to stay calm, but fear was gripping her heart. Adekunle, you don't have to do this. You already are losing everything. Just let me go. This doesn't have to end badly. But Adekunle wasn't listening. He grabbed her by her shoulders, shaking her roughly. You are mine, Kemi. You'll always be mine. And if you try to leave again, I'll destroy everything you love. Kemi's body trembled as she tried to fight back tears. Adekunle, please. Before she could finish, there was a loud crash. The door burst open, and Femi stormed into the room with a group of men behind him. Let her go, Femi shouted. Adekunle froze, his grip on Kemi loosening. He stared at Femi in disbelief. How did you find us? Femi smirked. You made one mistake, Adekunle. You underestimated us. The men with Femi quickly overpowered Adekunle's bodyguards, and within minutes, the police arrived. Adekunle was arrested, and as he was led away in handcuffs, he turned to Kemi with a bitter smile. This isn't over. But Kemi knew it was. She had finally broken free. With Adekunle behind bars, Kemi's life began to return to normalcy. The fear that had haunted her for months was slowly fading, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. Adekunle's empire had crumbled. His business partners had abandoned him, and the cult that once gave him power was now turning its back on him. But there was still one thing left to do. Adekunle had destroyed countless lives with his bullying and manipulation, and Kemi knew she couldn't just walk away without making sure he paid for what he had done, not just to her, but to everyone he had hurt. Femi suggested they organize a public apology from Femi. At first, Kemi was skeptical. Would Adekunle ever truly repent for what he had done? But Femi insisted it was the right move. People need to see that he is sorry and he is taking responsibility for his actions, Femi explained. If he does that, it will send a message to others like him. The day of the public apology arrived. Adekunle, looking tired and defeated, stood in front of the crowd of journalists, bloggers, and victims. He took a deep breath and began to speak. I have made many mistakes, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I allowed power and greed to corrupt me. I hurt people. I bullied and manipulated those who trusted me. I am truly sorry for all the pain I have caused. As Adekunle spoke, Kemi felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her still resented him for everything he had done to her, but another part of her was relieved. This was the closure she needed. After the apology, Kemi and Femi stood together, watching as the crowd slowly dispersed. Kemi turned to Femi and smiled. We did it. VBM grinned back. Yeah, we did. Their relationship had grown stronger throughout the ordeal. Kemi had found love in an unexpected place, someone who had stood by her side through her darkest moment. Together, Kemi and Femi began to campaign against bullying and cultism in the society, using their experience to raise awareness and help others avoid the same pitfalls. It wasn't just a personal victory, it was a movement. And Kemi knew that, with Femi by her side, they could make a real difference. As they walked away hand in hand, Kemi felt lighter than she had in months. The past was behind her, and the future was full of possibilities. She had survived the storm, and now she was ready to build a new life, a life free from fear, manipulation, and control. So tell me, have you ever been bullied like this before? Or do you know anyone who has been bullied like this before? What was the response? Share it in the comment section. Alright, please subscribe to this channel right now and turn on post notification so that whenever a story is posted, you'll be the first to get notified and you'll be the first to watch. Like and share this. Don't forget to drop your lessons in the comment section. Subscribe and see you in our next story. Bye bye.